stage to give the keynote address in due concerns with this topic, which is the future of commercial space. Please put your hands together and join me in welcoming on stage the former chairman of ISRO, the one and only, the brilliant Dr. S. Somanath.
So good evening, all of you. So I'll give a very quick presentation on the future of commercial space in this global investors meet. I'm just out of the government, just only one month after that. So my talk will be more biased towards ISRO, not yet into the private eco space system, but still I will try to cover something that's very important for, if you look at the commercial space. As far as ISRO is concerned, we have been working to make sure the transitioning from a government-owned space program to more of a space ecosystem where the private and government will come into action to primarily to scale up the way in which that we have been working in space by creation of the new entities, the InSpace, the NSIL, the public sector undertaking, and many other activities have been happening in and around the primary verticals that ISRO has been trying to do. Of course, I'll talk about some of the outcome of it, which is very important as far as the commercial space is concerned. And one of the studies that was recently done indicated that the outcome of the investment that you have made in government space expenditure has been really substantial in terms of the, for every $1 that has been invested, the return of investment has been as much as 2.54. Possibly it could be higher. One of the recent update is almost 3. And also they brought out a study with respect to the total, the boosting of the public funding, the total employment generation, the cumulative national economy contribution, and which all sectors it has really helped. And there is a detailed report which is going to be released. Possibly you can read and understand that a little later. So today's purpose is not into that. Then I won't spend more time on it. The primary goal of the space sector reform in the recent times is to create a national space enterprise consisting of the ISRO, which is the Department of Space and ISRO, which is the primary research and development organization, the New Space India Limited, which is a PSU, which will own and operate most of the activities that ISRO has been doing, the InSpace, which is the handholder, promoter, authorizer of the private space ecosystem, and many other players, actors, industries, autonomous bodies, academic institutions that are there with us. The goal which is set by all of us in the space sector reform is to really scale up the space economy contribution from a 2% to a 10% level. Possibly the number of, in terms of dollars, it may differ based on how much is the global space economy is valued at $500 billion. It's valued now. Possibly it will grow to 800 billion or so in next 5-10 years of time. So the appropriate share of that must be the target. And this is possible only by participation of large number of private ecosystem into the space sector. Now, Bangalore is really blessed with a lot of such players. Even the genesis of ISRO, the space program being led from Bangalore is on account of the reason that the space and aerospace activity started with the institutions like Indian Institute of Science, my alma mater, and many other organizations that we work together created that type of power and energy in space sector to grow in Bangalore, and especially when you discuss this in Bangalore as part of the growth of science and technology in Karnataka, I think we should be all proud and happy to be here to talk about the growth of space and aerospace ecosystem. Now, talking about the global trends in space, I think all of you know very well that the trend today is to look at many of the points which I have mentioned here, though without expanding each of them. I would like to say that the growth in terms of the new generation of spacecrafts, looking at space manufacturing, servicing, deorbiting, and many other services becomes a primary mission goal of some of the new developers. Constellations becomes the new mantra, and how to launch constellation both in terms of Earth observation, communication, PNT, surveillance all becomes a talking point, because small satellite building and launching in numbers is now possible and accessible for most people. And then talking about space-based solutions like the IoT, automation, governance support, etc. becomes another topic. Space tourism, though it has not really scaled up or operated in size, still that's a topic of discussion. And space situational awareness, space traffic management all becomes a successful model that many people are trying to emulate. Though there are governmental activities happening very much in this area, private ecosystem is also developing in these domains. If you look at the markets, you will see the upstream, downstream, and midstream. The rocket buildings, satellite building, the high technology area are part of the upstream, whereas the share of the investment and money could be very high there, but the percentage of return is low. But if the downstream, if you see, the revenue is much higher here. And the risk associated with building downstream business models are lower. So this becomes an important point, which I will elaborate a little later, which is a key purpose of my talk here. Another important point is the Space Policy 2023 brought in the usage of space-based data much wider in the community. It's very important for us now to talk about it, because satellite data has been traditionally been collected by ISRO satellites, now made it open now up to 5-meter resolution, and higher resolutions are actually sold out for as a price now. But then the data is now being consumed by the society, community in much bigger way than in the past. So this is a good the trend, but this is not enough now. We are looking at how the entire data can now move to the private ecosystem, and really monetizing the data in creating services and applications is another important topic which we should discuss. This slide we have been showing many a times, both in space and us, ISRO, when we were there, and I was then ISRO, that the number of startups, numbers that has increased substantially, the contribution in investment in startups have increased, and the growth in space economy, as I mentioned, is really as a target, and some of the household names in startups and space companies are also being talked about. So a very important point that we should give confidence to anyone who wants to come into space sector and show this slide and tell them, yes, now we are in the beginning phase of it. If you are really interested, innovate and want to come in, this is the right time to come in. But there are challenges in this. This is something which you need to understand, and we must discuss when we are in the panel. Of course, some of the emerging private space sector is really making heads on like the Skyroot, the Agnikul, and other satellites like the Pixel, the Gandhra. I think all of them have been in the news in the recent times for good reasons, and we should all be proud of their initiative, their capacity to come up and then showcase something that has never happened before. The expanding Indian space ecosystem is something which is very important for the government now to look at it, while the private is going to grow in these sectors, but what the government is going to do. And one of the studies recently done indicated that the government investment in space will continue to remain at a very high percentage. Typically 60 to 70% of the space business will continue to be controlled by the government usages or investments. So as far as India is concerned, it's very clear now we are trying to invest more money into domains like exploration, like the moon missions, building space stations, targeting human space flight exploration, expansion, even targeting human landing on the moon. All this becomes part of the work which will not be easily accessible for people in the industry. So how do you really monetize this work also in the long term is one topic that we should actually discuss. With respect to launcher capabilities, another important topic. One of the important points that we have seen globally is the access to space is now affordable for many people. The cost has come down. That's why there is a large-scale number of the satellite launches taking place, and a lot of people are interested in working on it. So reusable rocket building has become mandatory. Though we delayed that process in India for some time, I'm very happy that I could work on it and then get an approval from the government to work on a reusable launch development. Possibly it will happen in 6-7 years of time, but we are already late. So should look at how this can be accelerated, possibly look at some of the development that can happen in the private ecosystem as well. So I mentioned about the exploration program, the Vision 2047, in which the government has already committed to spend almost 2 lakh crores of money in space sector itself in this period of time, progressively investing and creating the capability, building missions to moon, scientific exploration, creating the capacity in institutions, and I'm sure many of the private players can really find out where you can actually pitch in to find out some roles to play. For example, the space station building, very important, which I want to tell you. When you build a space station of this nature, the Bharatiya Antariksha Station, it cannot survive there without doing any active research component. So which are the topics of interest where private ecosystem can come and then work in this microgravity environment, zero gravity environment, space radiation. For example, we identified a whole lot of research topics which could be interesting to industries, interesting to academic institutions, research laboratories, and this could be helping at least some of the industries who to scale up their work in as far as material research, medicine research synthesis, molecule synthesis, genomic research, space biology, all these domains possibility of doing advanced research exist. Again, the topic of communication. I think communication is again an important topic in the geostationary side. It has been again a monopoly of ISRO in the past. Now that monopoly has been changed. All the satellites are now moved into the NSIL's domain, and more satellites will be built in the private domain also. Recently, announcement by InSpace, the first ever geostationary communication satellite will be built by a private company to launch, put in an Indian slot and then made available. So this is one opportunity to coordinate new slots for communication and put geosynchronous satellite launches and build them and launch from India. So this is again another opportunity, and some of the industries are pitching in to look at how we can register new slots and then take up this activity. Similarly, it's a space-based observation. The first time in the country that we have signed contract with 3 private companies in India to build Earth observation satellites for strategic use. And this is a very, very good news for at least for startups and companies who are venturing into building satellites. The positioning, navigation, timing networks, for example, the GPS, the GLONASS, and others. The NAVIC is also already there in the space, and how to commercially exploit this is another topic. Of course, one of the launches that recently happened couldn't go to the orbit, and the NAVIC is still not in the fully operational regime. But I'm very happy that the new band called the L1 band has come into NAVIC, which will be helping the civilian use of navigation services from NAVIC to become operational. So this is another goal. And the next goal is to globally provide services, not just regional service, how to convert it into global constellation not at very high cost. So there is a model already worked out, and how to make it possible is another topic. Of course, when this comes, the business case is here, how to convert these services into commercialization, product development, and making it accessible to people in this country. In, for example, e-tolling, vehicle tracking, IoT, and many other services. Another major topic is the space debris. I'm very happy at least 1 or 2 companies are working in the growing issue of space debris. I don't want to give a talk on the dangers of space debris here, but the number is increasing, and the business case for handling space debris, providing services, space situational awareness, bringing them back, handling the situations like this, developing technologies to safeguard space asset from space debris, all becomes a business case for people who are interested. And one of the important topics recently addressed is how to create a space situational awareness network, primarily based on optical space telescopes, both ground-based and space-based. And one of the company in India has become successful in securing some contracts on putting space situational awareness capability in space. I think this is a huge thing that has really happened. And many of the technologies that ISRO was trying to develop, the robotics, like the docking, the robotic arms and services, deployers, refueling capability. I think these are some of the topics that at least 2 or 3 startup companies are already working in this domain in Bangalore. I hope that they will scale up in the coming days, and they will come up with solutions for new companies to be available here. So this again seems to be an interesting area, especially in the domain of robotics, electric propulsion, new algorithms that you can help you to observe, go proximity services, etc. Another area is the launcher development manufacturing area, where already the ISRO has announced that most of its launchers will move to industries. The initial steps are taken in moving the PSLV. The next steps of moving the SSLV, the LVM3 is already on the cards. I believe in another few months, the contracts for such transitioning to industry manufactured rockets will take place. And this will help at least 1 or 2 big companies to come up and establish manufacturing facilities in India, which is lacking very much, because the manufacturing capability in rockets today is well distributed and not really focused in one roof like what we see in other places, which is a potential business case for someone who is interested to invest and create their capability. Technology transfer is another area where there is a huge amount of technology in ISRO, and many people even today not aware of how much you can actually harness from ISRO and then take it to industry and scale up. For example, technologies in TRL level 7, 8 are actually available, but then nobody is really aware of it, and then possibility of such cooperation is still not entering into big scale. I will only tell you that the technology focus is something that ISRO has put for itself, and we have been developing technology in many, many domains. For example, AI, robotics, materials, quantum, space manufacturing. Many of these domains, actually, there is large amount of skill available in ISRO. So I will only say those who are keen to work in space industry, find out opportunity, connect through in space, and then reach out to people in ISRO to know more about it. I will only conclude with 1 or 2 slides more, is only to tell you the commercial space market and business opportunities. I try to list them already in this, which are the one which is really available to you to work on, both in all 3 segments, the upstream, midstream, and downstream. In the upstream, I find that there is a huge potential to look at small launch vehicles and services, which is already happening. Maybe in a few years, it will really become operational. Building rockets of large-scale rockets and its parts. In India, you are able to launch only 6, 7, 8 launches per year, primarily because the manufacturing ecosystem in this country is still lacking. And there is a demand for launches. For example, when I was a chairman, I got an offer that, are you in a position to launch 10 LVM-3 in 6 months? I said, no, I can't manufacture 10 launch vehicles in 6 months and launch. Just because that there are ecosystem for manufacturing is still not existing. So why don't we address such issues and really create a sustainable manufacturing base for it? Similarly, if you look at the midstream in terms of the small satellite manufacturing, even today, a large amount of parts are being imported and brought from, and then kits are assembled in terms of EO systems, the cameras, the inertial sensors, the propulsion, and we need to develop them and then create a cost-effective solution for it. Similarly, the downstream, I think EO data services, it's still unexplored. For example, for a country like 140 crore people, the application of EO data is still maybe 1% of the community. I think there is a huge amount of untapped potential. Of course, I don't want to elaborate on it. We will discuss in the discussions. Thank you so much. I think I just wanted to give an overview of what potentials are existing for commercial space in this country, making use of what we did in ISRO in the past. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Somanath. If I could request you to kindly take your seat on the dais out here. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Dr. Somanath. I don't think there could have been a better person but you, sir, to start off our discussion on future on commercial space, especially seeing as you played such a pivotal role for our India's Chandrayaan and Mangalyaan mission. Our compliments to you on that. Given the opportunity, yes, indeed. Given the opportunity, I'm sure everyone out here would like to pick your brains on space research and exploration. I suppose this provides a great opportunity for you to be a part of this panel discussion and see what your thoughts and views on that are. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, let's dive straight into our panel discussion. Allow me the pleasure of introducing and welcoming on stage our panelists for this discussion. We have with us Mr. Jacob Gullish, Executive Director, Digital Economy, Media, Entertainment, and Satcom US, India Business Council, US Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Jacob, if you could kindly join us on stage. Thank you for taking the time off and joining us out here for Invest Karnataka 2025. Accompanying our dignitaries on stage, we have Mr. Husain Suterwala, Senior Policy Advisor, Office of Secretary of Defense, Space Policy Partnership. Thank you, Mr. Husain, for taking the time off and joining us out here for Invest Karnataka 2025. Looking forward to hearing about our topic, your thoughts and perspectives. Moderating this panel discussion, we have with us Mr. Abhishek Malhotra, Managing Partner, TMT Law Practice. Mr. Abhishek, onto the stage. Gentlemen, let's dive straight into this panel discussion. Mr. Abhishek, I'll leave the platform to you to lead the way.
Thank you so much. And thank you very much for inviting us here and giving us the opportunity to discuss this extremely engaging and, as the topic suggests, futuristic topic in relation to an area which for the longest time we've only been perhaps reading and dreaming about, but now it is turning out into a reality. And if it is to be turning out into reality, there are various aspects of it that need attention, that need detailing, and that need information to be spread to as many people as possible. So, this session, we will be trying to address 2 or 3 aspects. And some of those have been highlighted, brilliantly by Dr. Somanath in the presentation. I was just going through all the slides that Dr. Somanath was putting up, and I felt that if we really need to go in depth into some of the aspects that he highlighted, we will need an entire day, because there are so many things that are happening specifically in the last 3 to 4 years that have made this area, commercial space, an extremely interesting place to be in, be a part of, and look to investing in, not just from the point of view of developing the commercial environment, but also to add to the overall national capital for this industry in the country, and then subsequently, of course, contribute to the world. So, we will be discussing the aspects of course, one of the biggest challenges is always, how do you find finance? How do you find investment for this particular opportunity to really develop into reality? We'll be discussing that. We'll be discussing aspects of, the fact that we are here as part of Invest Karnataka, and Bangalore, as was highlighted by Dr. Somanath, has been one of the, places where I could say, places of birth for the entire space program for the country. So how does Bangalore and Karnataka fit in to the entire scheme of things? And some of the burning issues that are impacting not just the national ecosystem, but how things are happening across the world. So, how we're going to do this is, I'm going to just be directing specific questions to the members of this panel, and towards the end, we will open it up to specific questions to the audience. Dr. Somanath, I just wanted to, I know it's been the budget in 2025 concentrated a lot on the national mission with regard to geospatial data. Now, the announcement, specifically as it comes in conjunction with the budget, assumes a lot of significance. If you could please tell us something about that, and what are the repercussions of that from a commercial space aspect?
No, as already been told, the space-based data is very, very important as far as the conversion of whatever investment that we make in space into monetization. For example, the data that we have been collecting in the past, especially the EO data, is huge. The change detection approaches and systematic study of it can yield huge amount of information. In the past, the government has been investing money to create this type of knowledge as far as the government functioning was concerned. So we were interacting with the ministries, departments to make use of it. For example, the entire groundwater prospecting of this country is now possible using the satellite-based data. And that database is such a good data. You look at the cartographic information in terms of the entire data in terms of high resolution is available. The digital elevation map of this country is available. The arid areas, the forest area, the demarcations, the water bodies, the rivers, its water variation annual means. This information has so much of value. But this all resides only within the government in terms of decision makers, in terms of the knowledge, it is there. But then how do you really make use of it to create some value? And this has been shown successfully by some of the startups. In how you really help in terms of banks to do the lending services, making use of the intelligence that you can gather from the data over many years. For example, agricultural data, land, you can see whether it has been productive over the last so many years and whether it is worth investing in this to create more value. So, and similar exercise can be done in many, many areas. So EO data becoming more democratic and available and putting more satellites to create it becomes very important. And if you look at the models in Europe and US, the same examples are seen. For example, Sentinel, the Copernicus has shown that the value it can generate is really high, though the investment is mostly governmental. So the government looks at how this data to be generated out of the governmental investment, but its monetization will happen in the public by the businesses and will not be charged also. So this geospatial policy allows it to be sold really free. So the free access of the data becomes an important element. Earlier, many people have tried on how to sell it at a cost. I think this model did not work very well. And more than that, there are other elements to it. For example, it's not just the resources that we are looking at. It has also strategic element in it. For example, observation is so crucial for national security. So there is also an investment coming on account of that aspect as well. For example, another element is in terms of the economy. The mineral prospecting, the forest reserves, the disaster mitigation. I think all of this requires the oceans, the sea coast. I think all of this requires EO data, which is primarily to be analyzed and used. So I believe today, this area, there is a huge potential still not explored by Indian business houses. How do you really convert this data into some possibilities? One of them which I would like to tell you today is, for example, the fisheries. No, there is a data which is coming from the oceans. Oceans at the scatterometers. This data is actually converted to create something called the fish advisory for fishermen to go and catch fish. But it is not commercially exploited. This data is available and sometimes it is used, sometimes not used. But this is a huge data that can be used by somebody who has an interest in converting this data into a commercial product and then sell it to fishermen community, the boat owners, the fishing community, and then make a income out of it. If they are able to catch good fish, of course, they will be happy to share with you that type of who is the information provider can get benefited. So we need to look at how to convert all of these governmental owned programs into a commercial space.
I think very interesting, and one other example that perhaps I may be able to add to it, and you mentioned, for example, agriculture, and what the yield has been of a particular area, and how that yield has changed over a period of time, and what impact that is likely to make in terms of crop or crop rotation, etc. That's huge potential, not just from a social sort of impact standpoint, but also maybe to just adjust government policies towards how it should look at perhaps, if there are, for example, we keep hearing about these instances of farmers taking loans, farmers suicide, etc. So how that can perhaps be impacted. And secondly, how the same data could potentially then be also sold to insurance companies who can look at it from that point of view.
No, recently the Agriculture Ministry has announced a program, Yes Tech program, which is specifically on this topic. How do you really look at agricultural insurance based on space-based data? And ISRO, along with the state governments and private companies, have joined hands together now, and that is already rolled out. It's reasonably successful in some of the states.
Well, thank you so much for that. Mr. Suterwala, just, if you were to really identify in the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years, a handful of, 2, 3, 4 areas where real disruption can take place. Because I think in any new and emerging area, there will be, of course, people who are existing players who've already established their position, specifically in this area of commercial space. India, because of the fact that we've only entered into it recently on a commercial scale, and there too, primarily in the case of startups, disruption is going to be very important for us to really make our presence felt. So if you are to identify a certain few areas where you think the disruption is likely to take place, what would your take be?
Yeah, thank you. It's interesting because you're using disruption, I think, in a positive context. And so I've been here kind of wrapping up my trip, started off first 2 days at Aero India, met with companies, met with a bunch of startups today through Mach 33. And what kind of surprised me, and I don't know why it surprised me, is just the sheer amount of inherent talent that resides in India, and specifically in Bangalore. I'm talking about the engineers. I met with companies that are developing very novel capabilities, things, thinking about doing space-based analysis to kind of lower the amount of data that comes back to terrestrial stations. And these are young folks, and these are companies that are, establishing themselves. I think one specific area, I don't know if I can name 4 or 5, but one area where I feel like India will find success and already kind of has is in developing SSA capabilities, space situational or space domain awareness data. The chairman talked about data and how that data can be used and how it is available. In the US, Spacecom has this website, spacetrack.org. It's available for anyone. You sign up, there's an agreement, and it's data that you get for free. Governments can sign up through the JCO, the Joint Commercial Operations Cell, and academia and all these other organizations can come and take this data and leverage it for their own use and then provide products back, and they can even sell that data. So why I mention India specifically, because there's been several companies that have successfully, startup companies that have successfully bidded on US contracts through US Space Force and have been awarded contracts. Digantara comes to mind. I think Pixel has a contract as well. Again, there's a few, there's not that many, but I think it is showing that there's a desire in the US to buy this data, and India can be a great provider of SSA data, for example. Another area is Satcom. There's a huge desire to gain Satcom capability, not just by the US military, but globally, other countries, and specifically India. PNT, developing technology and concepts to prevent adversaries from doing spoofing, is again another area, a niche area where I feel India, amongst very few countries, have excelled because they've built their indigenous capability through, I believe it's called NAVCENT, the indigenous PNT capability. There's only a handful of countries that have been able to do that. For India to expand that PNT, of course there's going to be reliability. There's going to be reliability on commercial. Again, I can speak to the model that the U.S. government, primarily through Spacecom, used. Our dependence on the commercial space industry cannot be overstated. The U.S. government, for example, does not do launch. Again, another area where I think Indian companies, and I met with a few, one specifically that's developing the propulsion system for a medium lift rocket, something that is not that available. And there's limitations on how much, with the existing capabilities are, how much launch capacity is there. So when we build up our industry, we recognize that there is a dependence for the US warfighter in the space domain to have on commercial industry. Our government poured money into this industry to support it, to grow it. Probably a decade ago, we maybe had a few hundred companies. Now today, we have more than 5,000 commercial companies providing, a range of services to the US military.
Thanks. And that's great input. And I think some of the messaging that is going out to this audience perhaps will try and get some of them who've already been working in some of these in a manner positive disruption sort of area, and to really get the space ecosystem and the commercial space ecosystem in India moving in that direction. Jay, I had a question for you. Towards the end of Dr. Somanath's presentation, there was a reference to technology transfer and the capability that ISRO has and the potential for people to tap into that huge research capability and existing sort of models and existing products that are available. I wanted to ask you, given how India's technology transfer framework sort of is working, what's the message that goes out into the international market of how we are placed vis-a-vis technology transfer? And if you were to really sort of mention areas of improvement where this could be, we could really harness that capability a little better, what would those be?
Great, thank you. First, I want to thank Invest Karnataka for having me here to talk today about commercial space. Particularly, it's a topic that I'm tremendously passionate about. And I've been involved in this area in over a decade. We met maybe 15 years ago. And just kind of think about where we are today from where we began. And I think we just need to recognize that India is on a tremendous journey here. And we've seen changes in the way India not only thinks about in leadership, about tapping commercial capabilities for the benefit of not only civil and military space, but for the general benefit of the economy. We've seen wholesale changes in FDI policy, in how the government is organized, how they regulate the sector, how they think about entrepreneurs, how they think about startups, and as how they think about leaders that are envisioning the really tremendous and true potential of what commercial space brings to the table. And so when you talk about tech transfer, I think about it in a slightly different way. India's competitive edge has always been technology, whether it's IT or engineering, hard or soft. It is where India excels. There are people and talent here that are literally unrivaled, not only individually, but collectively and at scale and at competitive costs that you just cannot find anywhere in the world. So if you think about whether it's making semiconductors or software or space applications or hardware, Indian technology is going to lead. And ISRO has tremendous technology that it's transferred to the private sector. And the private sector has incredible ideas that they've been able to not only leverage existing, but build on to kind of think about what is the art of the possibility. So it's not about tech transfer, it's about what you actually do with that. The commercial world has certain capabilities and processes and cost efficiencies that governments will never really be able to do. But smart governments tap those capabilities. And we see that in India, and we've certainly seen that in the United States with a commercial space enterprise that's 30 years old now, whether it's imaging data, whether it's commercial weather data, whether it's NASA commercial missions, and India is starting that journey and starting really strong and really moving fast. So when we take tech transfer, you have the technology. The critical element here is what do you do with it? If we talk about commercial space as just purely government contracting to commercial entities, we are underestimating the real potential of what commercial space looks like. Commercial space could and should be how do visionaries think about tapping private and public markets for the benefit of whether it's the benefit of a company or society to do really revolutionary things. And so the tech transfer that's coming out now has to be rethought, rebuilt for truly commercial markets. And that's where India is just first starting its second phase of this commercial journey. And we'll get into that more. But I think the tech transfer is only a small piece of it. It's really what do you do? What are the markets? What are the ecosystems? What are the applications that in the end drive value? And value, again, attracts usage and money and investment and all of that. So.
Thanks so much, Ajay. And I think that's extremely important that technology is available. The technology transfer is taking place. In fact, there are guidelines that have been issued for how that is to take place. And perhaps, as Dr. Somanath said, maybe a greater amount of information needs to be spread to the people who are interested in doing this as to how they should go about it, they should talk to, how they should access it, and most importantly, what ultimate use they're going to put to it. So I think...
I'll add something here. Recently we conducted a workshop for automobile industries to come connected to ISRO and seek which are the technologies that are available in space that can be used in automobile technologies. So similar.
No, absolutely, and I think as with smart cars and aspects thereof, there are certainly straight away those use cases are fairly apparent, and I think that I hope that develops into a more engaging and lasting conversation with some actual benefits being accrued to the automobile industry. Moving on, so we've underscored the importance of this sector and the importance that is being accorded to it by the government of India by the fact that we've had 3 or 4 policies in the last 2 or 3 years. We've had the FDI sector opening up, which was released in February of last year and finally by notification in April in 2024. We've had various entities submitting applications to be permitted to invest through that particular route, and that process is ongoing. What's the next step? Yes, the policy framework is there. Yes, the regulations are permitting investments to thrive, not just local investment, but foreign investment as well. But now it's the question of where we get the money from. Well, the first answer again came from the government, where a 1,000 crore venture capital fund has been set up to essentially assist and allow for pre-seed and in early seed capital investment for space startups in the country. So I think there was, of course, a huge announcement around it. There was some some amount of literature that's circulated, but we'd like to hear from Dr. Somanath some more salient features of that to be able to, how one can really tap into that, and what's the agenda, how does one go about fulfilling that particular promise?
There were many schemes. One of them is the 1,000 crore VC fund. And the purpose of this is not really to fund any company in terms of their full demand of money. It's only to give a confidence to the investors to show that this particular company has been seen by space professionals and found a great utility in it. So it gives confidence for additional investments to come in. I think that's the primary goal of the VC funding. And the VC funding is now going to be operated by a fund operator, professional fund operator, which will be announced soon, and the norms of selecting and supporting such will be released soon. So that's the next step. It's still not made operational. I think that has to happen.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an AIF under the SEBI rules, etc.
Yes,
That's how it's going to be set up. Yes.
So then another two initiative that we have taken recently is to create a fund for helping startups and companies to scale up their technology from TRL 3-4 level to 8-9 level. So this funding is also given as a grant now, and this is already, government approval process is already getting completed. Up to 25 crore can be given for technology upgradation alone with no commercial goals identified. Some industry wants to take up that particular job, they can identify a TRL 3-4 technology and then invest this much of money to take it to 8-9. And then if it is successful for induction into a commercial program and you get a return out of it, then you need to pay back. If you are not successful, don't pay back. Now this type of announcement is already there. For almost 500 crore has been identified for it. And another step is to create space parks or space support cells across various states. And this funding could be as much as 100 crore per state, where you can establish facilities for startups and companies where they find high value investments for testing and validation. You don't find facilities, for example, vibration, environmental testing, space scale, qualification. Such facilities will be created by department, and this facility will be under the state government's control in some space park. Suppose the state government identified a space park location where there are many companies, such a facility will be created on government cost and will be run on a commercial basis. So such initiatives are taken primarily to help startups and companies to come in.
This would be akin to the STPI, the software technology parks? Will it be similar?
No, here the goal of setting up the space park lies with the role of space park setting with the state governments only, and it's not by the central government. In that space park, in space, ISRO will jointly set up a facility which will be funded by the government of India.
I think there was some conversation around setting up such a space park in Kerala sometime in 2020.
It's already set up.
It's already set up.
It's already set up, and many others are coming up here.
Yes, because I think that process had slowed down a little because of COVID, but then I think it picked up some speed. In light of that response that we've just received from Dr. Somanath J, I wanted to ask you, you've had a certain amount of experience in this particular industry at a worldwide level, you've seen this. What, according to you, would be the ideal scenario for access to funding? Would it be venture capital? Would it be private equity? Would it be a combination of these? Would it be public-private partnerships? Would it be grants? Your take on that.
Thank you. And I actually just want to weave in the question that you asked Husain, because if you're thinking about investing in space, a couple of things. One, you can look at what's been successful already internationally. And globally, there are very mature markets for space. They think about a lot of the infrastructure and the platforms and the services as very mature activities that you can be involved in and you can fund. So there are obviously age-old grants, there are academic spin-offs, something that we've talked a lot about in India and other ways. Academic spin-offs around NASA centers really drive a lot of kind of new ideas and activities, and then they can tap the more traditional venture capital and move up to mezzanine and then ultimately be mature and do debt capital or go for an IPO and things of that nature. There's also a whole insurance market that helps the private sector manage risk in a way that governments basically insure. A satellite blows up and they're like, do we want to build it again? In the private sector, everything's insured. So yes, there's some disruption, but at least financially there's some ability to recoup that. And so I would think that India could look to replicate some of those sorts of activities in its very strong financial sector, right? And so that's kind of one thing, and it's all of the above there, but also look at some things that have been very successful already internationally. Get some of the national banks, private sector banks, the insurance companies to consider space as part of their overall portfolio. Then the second question is, what do you want to fund? And that's where I'm going back to that initial question on disruption. And if you're looking at disruption from a commercial point of view, right, as a private company, you're going to do one of basically two general markets. You're either going to try to do something better, cheaper, and sell it to governments, which will continue to be a major part of the ecosystem, and whether that's civilian or military, or do you go after entirely commercial markets, and that you have to create. And so some of the things that I see as really kind of, maybe not revolutionary, but certainly impacting is reusability. There's obviously been a lot of focus on reusability in launch, but what about reusability in satellites? These are expensive platforms, right? How do you, maybe even reusability of components? This is just fundamentally a way to make space more cost effective, and traditionally nothing was reusable, everything was expendable. So that across the board reusability, I think, is going to be a major piece of the puzzle. So if you could build something that's reusable, it could be used multiple times, it changes the entire value proposition and in terms of the long-term cost. The second is, I think you can look to the United States, which is a clear leader, and there's a few markets that have been highly successful that don't actually exist at all in India. And what are some of those? Satellite internet, right? Whether it's geostationary with high spot beam Ka satellites, and I don't want to get too technical, or it's some of the new, low Earth orbit, right? That is an entire market that then generates internet connectivity in places that you currently do not have it, that has an incredible amount of follow-on effect. Imagine a fisherman who could get real-time fishing data, and then share it with somebody else. Or perhaps mining companies, or the NISAR data, which NISAR is a US-India satellite that's coming online, is going to have incredible real-time soil moisture, right? And then you have to get it to the people that use it. Hey, the timing is right to go plant your seeds today, tomorrow, or yesterday. That sort of thing is going to be really, really valuable. The third thing that I think India needs to look at is terrestrial satellite integration in telecoms networks. Telecoms is one of the biggest sectors globally, and Satcom is the biggest sector in space. And if you're able to integrate Satcoms formally into the edge of the network, into the cell phone itself, it changes the entire cost structure of telecommunications, from towers to fiber optics and things of that nature. And the last thing I'll just mention is something as simple as satellite radio. Obviously a very vibrant sector in the United States, very mature. And I can think back to my very first time in India, where World Space launched here, and government regulation, if I may say, killed it because they weren't allowed to put it into cars. And so you had a radio that was satellite-based, but they couldn't put it into the car, which was the model. But it's a very, I think, a vibrant market in the United States. So, back to you.
No, thanks so much. Now, I do want you to add to that, and just adding another question so that you can have a sort of complete. In addition to the models, which I would like you to speak to, what do you think about the message that's going out, the perception that's created in the international market about the regulatory scenario in India, and these options and the incentives that are being created for commercial space, of the growth for commercial space in the country? And what do you think can be done slightly differently to enhance that?
Yeah, so let me go to the first part, and I agree with everything Jacob said. What I would add to that, specifically for India, what we have done, the Department of Defense, is that we have several initiatives that are with India. And there's funding available for Indian companies, startup companies specifically, to engage with US companies to bid on contracts from US Space Force, and then also to prototype and then execute. INDUS-X is one of the major initiatives. There's also ISAT. There's DIUX, runs different programs, and they'll put out requirements, and they'll allow companies to bid on. Then we have an organization called FedTech. Under the FedTech, within that, they have a program I2A. It's specifically focused on India. How the organization itself pairs up Indian startup companies with American companies. Some of these American companies are startups, and some of them are actually more like what we would say as a prime, well-established defense contractors. So it's, again, it's kind of like an incubator. It gives a forum for companies to be introduced through these various initiatives, and again, get connectivity to American companies. They work together, co-develop, co-produce, and then co-deliver. Now, the second thing on the regulatory, I think one thing we did as space is, again, it's a domain that is evolving at breakneck speeds. When we go out and we field, test, and deploy certain technologies in the space domain, they can be done within 18 months, which is unheard of in the defense realm, right? If you look at traditional defense programs where you go through a whole procurement cycle, where you work with the country, work on capability development, decide what to get, field it, train on it, I mean, that could take about 2 to 3 years, and then depending on where that country is in the line for delivery and execution. But when it comes to space, because we have such a strong reliance on the commercial industry, and the commercial industry is incentivized to produce novel capabilities at a much, much faster rate than in the traditional defense domains, we get really good products, and we get them out at a really good speed. Now, where regulations come into place is that when my office specifically developed the DoD Commercial Integration Strategy 2024. I highly recommend. It's unclassified, available on the internet, and basically what that document, what that strategy did, was provide a demand signal to commercial industry. Now, this is U.S. commercial industry. When we developed that strategy, we worked with the startups. We worked with industry. We asked them that, hey, what are the challenges? What barriers do you face? And I believe India is working on something similar. The government is working with these startup companies, these companies that are able to provide space capabilities, to ask them where are the red tapes, where are the barriers, and it's on them, on the government, to work with other countries, work with the international forums to help break down those barriers and make Indian competitive in the global market space.
Thank you. And just wanted to, I think, perhaps add or highlight that when it comes to, because of the fact that there is an element or greater element of risk, at least from a perception standpoint, that's attached to the industry, not only are the initiatives from the government more than welcome, but instances of, where committed contracts are available or conferred upon these startups, either by the government or through these initiatives that you mentioned between the US and in India. There are various such initiatives that are ongoing. Those can then be used as leverage for the perhaps, generating debt or investments in that regard. And very importantly, we did realize from one of the slides that Dr. Somanath had put up to show what are the various kind of dependencies across industries for the space sector. One of the examples that you gave us more recently was the seminar with the automobile industry. But why can't we think of a model where industries that tend to benefit from the space ecosystem, telecom, minerals, healthcare, telemedicine being one of the best use cases in that space, why can't those industries come up and try and become investors so that the ultimate beneficiaries would also be those industries? So we can think of various alternative models to suit the needs of the particular sector. Moving on, I don't know whether Jay and Mr. Suterwala, you'll be able to contribute to this particular question, so I'm directing it to Dr. Somanath, but please do chime in if you have your thoughts. We are part of this session in Invest Karnataka. We do know that Karnataka and Bangalore specifically hold a special place for the space industry, but the question to you, Dr. Somanath, is what more can be done by Karnataka, by the government, and the incentives to be provided here to attract more and more talent, to attract more business and more investment?
The ecosystem which is developed here consists of various skill sets. For example, Bangalore is one of the place where we have the highest number of PhD holders. No, it has already been told, highest number of PhD. The research and development capability ecosystem here is very, very high. Equally important is the manufacturing capability, both in terms of electronics, software, and now into hardware manufacturing also. There are ecosystem getting developed. There are tertiary suppliers who are able to do manufacturing, which is environment-friendly manufacturing. Of course, there are other manufacturing which is space sector, which could be little dangerous. So that type of manufacturing ecosystem also developed. Now, what is lacking is integration and supply of full-fledged systems. It's not visible yet. The design people are doing a little bit of packets of design and some corners of the design, and you will also see some of them suppliers of small cards and components and subsystems which are not scaled up to the integration level. You will also see aerospace, aircraft and airline manufacturing which is happening in component level. Okay, not really, but still developments are taking place. Integration goals are there, but I'm still not seeing this is a product of Bangalore. I couldn't see anything. The first satellite coming out of Bangalore, I am yet to see that. Okay, so maybe a liquid engine being manufactured as an integrated engine from Bangalore, or a software package of a high caliber. Of course, there is a huge amount of software skill sets around here, but a solution that is driving software industry, is it still visible? So I will hope that such a company comes up here, will be able to integrate and provide a full-fledged solution in space sector. My goal is that it won't start from a very complex system. It will start from something like a spacecraft. Today there are small satellite building companies, but then I will hope that there is a communication satellite, a 4-ton, 6-ton class of satellite will be built by a company in India and launched from Bangalore. It's one goal because it creates an ecosystem of electronics manufacturing, assembly and testing, propulsion, integration, test facilities, and that ecosystem is existing in some way or the other. And it's the right time to create it. I will also say the manufacturing ecosystem for especially the precise manufacturing, additive manufacturing, design for manufacturing capability, analysis capability, that's all are available in different pockets. It helps you to manufacture high-end products like an engine. Okay, but here the liquid engine manufacturing is again scattered, very well scattered across the country. For example, I know some of the manufacturing, the electro discharge machining, the high-end manufacturing capability doesn't exist in scale in Bangalore. So we need to look at what really lacks here and can we really complement and create such a manufacturing capability under one umbrella, one roof. Then, in fact, I was trying to look at it, how to do that in the last few years. Possibly this is something which I hope will happen.
Thank you. Jay, any contributions from you on this?
Well, I could be a little provocative, or I could use some experiences from the United States where a handful of American states have also focused on developing the economics around the space economy, Florida, California, Colorado, and Alaska. Many of those states initially target a spaceport of some sort, and some of those spaceports are highly commercial, maybe focused on space tourism or something that's not currently ongoing. That's certainly one idea. The other is, I think there's some applications that, space-based applications that you know work internationally. Space-based radio is one that I just think that in rural areas and elsewhere could really be something where if the government, in its desire to fund startups or something like that, could look at the type of company that is actually utilizing some of this capacity, develop a pilot product that then could be moved nationally or something like that. And then, if I'll stop right there. I'll wait to be provocative a little later.
Husain, what about you? If you can add something to this.
I mean, I can go a little off script. I wonder what the economic benefits are. Like, what incentives does the government, right, the local government, give to companies that relocate to Bangalore? I think in the U.S., as space became something, I mean, space has always been cool, but in the last decade in the U.S., space has become really cool. We're doing so many more launches. I mean, you're seeing companies pop up right and left. I mean, children are into space. I got to go see, when I first started in my position, my office sent me out to Vandenberg in California, and I was there for a series of meetings on military base. And I remember the commander's like, hey, there's going to be a rocket launch. Why don't you go check it out? And I went to the beach and standing there by myself and got to see a rocket launch. And with me, there was like probably hundreds of Americans out, different parts near that area looking, also watching. So it excites people. And when you can set up your town, city, government, whatever area, focused on that, I think it will draw in a lot of people. But I think that in the US it happened as those industries matured. So a company will set up in Colorado and they start generating a lot of revenue. The industry itself is growing in America. More incentives are given by the states, right, at the state level, potentially at the local level, tax breaks, whatever, financial and economic incentives are available, and then people want to move there. They get the people that, personnel that want to actually move to those places and, settle down. So I think that's huge, but I mean, I can't speak to what incentives currently exist in this state, but, if I'm looking at it purely from an economic standpoint, I feel like a lot of these startups, because there's many, but there's not that many. I think there's about 200 Indian space startups, the majority of which are based in Bangalore. And, they don't have, many of them don't have large budgets. So when they get incentives, potentially a grant from the state, hey, if you relocate here or if you have X amount of employees, we will give you X amount of funding. That might be a strategy to not only support the companies that are here, but potentially draw in more companies.
Yeah.
I'll be very brief, I promise. But when we think about space companies and the space economy, many people in the industry think about building widgets or launching or satellites and whatnot. But the real power is in the services that use it. And if you expand their thinking about the space economy into some of those services, mapping or using the data or using the Satcom, and then utilizing it for value add, I think there's tremendous, absolutely tremendous potential in a state like Karnataka to make that available to add fuel to the rest of the economy and the rest of the startup community.
No, thank you so much. I will just like to end our sort of contribution to this session by making, a specific question, possibly a one-line answer because we are already short of time. Dr. Somanath needs to take a flight. So just one takeaway from this session that everyone should be taking away for each of you. My contribution to that takeaway is something that I've been speaking to for the last about 10 years. Yes, we have a great policy. Yes, the FDI has come into place. And specifically as a lawyer, I'm looking forward to the commercial space activities bill.
So key takeaway? Yep. Again, keeping it brief, I think I've personally witnessed over the course of this week being here, there's immense talent in India. I think, there's going to be, the natural trajectory is that the relationship between Indian companies and US companies is going to grow. We have too many similarities. We are democracies. We have a lot of agreements already in place. We have a lot of growth. That is natural. It's organic. And I think the future, it's going to be interesting to see over the next 5 years or potentially 2 years from now, next Aero India, how much the Indian space startup community grows.
The takeaway from this session, I believe there is a vigor of action now in the startup ecosystem in Karnataka. Has already been told that the largest number of space startup companies are here. And they are able to attract investments. They are on the path of scaling up. They are able to make impact and visibility outside the country now. Some of them based in Bangalore, which is a great thing to happen. And also I would like to add here is that me as a representative of the ISRO community, I would like to tell you that ISRO is behind them. Those who think that they are a competitor to the National Space Agency, they are trying to work differently, I think you are mistaken. I want to tell you that ISRO is with them to make sure that the ecosystem grow. It's a policy of the government to ensure that the private ecosystem in this country in space do scale up to greater heights, and we will work in a collaborative mode in which when they scale up to a level where they can handle it, ISRO will come out of it and then look at other tasks which are well defined and cut for the governmental job. So this is very clear. And this clarity was lacking in the past. And the clarity has now been brought, and I would like to tell young people who are envisioning to look at space as a possible venture, I think this is the right time for you to come in, and only the right place to contact here is this Invest Karnataka place, or you are together and make best use of it. Thank you.
India has made tremendous strides in its commercial space journey. It needs to be bold in the next round. We talked about the space bill a little bit earlier. So the real potential is not necessarily in the government systems and markets and whatnot. It's creating information that can be broadly spread throughout the entire economy and society that has tremendous values. So as we're thinking about what that looks like, governments should do what governments do best, provide some funding, some leadership, some infrastructure, but then provide the enabling environment, kind of right-fitted regulation, and then allow private sector to kind of do what it's best, to innovate, think out of the box, be bold, and leapfrog. So I'm really looking forward to the space bill. I think that's the next iteration because it's going to define where we go from here. And as I'll end where I began. We've made incredible strides, but we still have a long way to go, and it's going to be a very, very exciting journey.
And with that, I would really like to thank the panelists and the government of Karnataka, Invest Karnataka, Dr. Somanath, ISRO, the entire national space economy that Dr. Somanath alluded to. And as Jay concluded, these are very interesting times. We've set the base through the policies, through the regulatory scenario, through enabling investment. The next level is now for you, the entrepreneurs, to really make a really big deal out of private commercial space. Thank you very much for this.
What an absolutely brilliant discussion that's been.
Sorry, I won't be, unfortunately, because Dr. Somanath has to catch a flight, we won't be able to take any questions, but I guess we can send it to some email address and then perhaps answer it.
Certainly, Mr. Malhotra. I want to take this opportunity and thank our dignitaries on stage. Thank you so much for taking the time of and joining us out here at Invest Karnataka 2025, sharing with us your thoughts, your perspectives and opinion about the future of commercial space. A brilliant discussion it was. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for our dignitaries on stage. Mr. Malhotra, if I could request you to do the honors and hand over a token of appreciation from the government of Karnataka side to our dignitaries for today.
Ruko, boys.
We live separated. Our
Gentlemen, if I could request you to step forward for a quick photo opportunity. To the rest of you out here, thank you so much for joining us out here. That concludes our seminar session for day 2 of Invest Karnataka 2025. Be sure to together, let's reimagine growth and make the best of the opportunity being presented out here for our global investment meet out here. I do want to let you all know that we are going to go ahead with our SME Connect Awards ceremony, celebrating innovation and excellence that's happening now in the main hall, that is plenary hall, followed by a cultural extravaganza. So requesting you all to kindly make your way to the main hall. Our honorable chief guest, Shri Tawar Chand, is going to be present and gracing the occasion with his presence. So we will see you all at the main hall for the SME Connect Awards ceremony, followed by a cultural extravaganza. Thank you, everyone.